It's now officially been just over 1000 days since the sealing of Satoru Gojo inside of the prison realm, which makes it almost close to 3 years. Satoru Gojo is what makes the series of Jujutsu Kaisen keep ticking. He's easily the pinnacle in the world of Jujutsu and instilled fear to sorcerers and curses alike with just his presence alone, but it seems there may be a loophole for Gojo to escape the prison realm, not with the help of others, but by losing an eye. But before we expand more on this interesting theory, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the notification bell to stay updated when latest uploads. This video will contain spoilers from the manga. There's been a ton of foreshadowing concerning the left eye of Satoru Gojo's. This could mean many different things, and some could even say that this theory is a little far-fetched. But since it's only a theory, let's allow our imaginations to go wild, because I know regardless I'll get a lot of stick for covering this theory. Anyways, we've noticed how Gojo's left eye is emphasized a lot throughout Jujutsu Kaisen, and I'd like us to go over each hint and relate it back to how Satoru Gojo could use his left eye to escape the prison realm. So with that said, let's get straight in. Satoru Gojo is a person who you might even think is the main character of Jujutsu Kaisen. The way in which he's spoken about by the other characters make it seem that Gojo is all alone at the top, and rightly so. We've never really seen Gojo put into a tight spot other than the Shibuya incident arc, but all those years before, whilst he was a sorcerer, he's always being mentioned as the strongest, taking on countless missions alone, fighting off against special grades one after the other. It shows how much the Jujutsu world relied on him. But Akutami is a genius when it comes to religious symbolism and foreshadowing in the JJK series. He tends to mention little bits of the future plot here and there, and then you're able to piece the puzzle together. But with that said, let's first dissect the foreshadowing, which we notice in the Jujutsu Kaisen openings. As for the very first opening of Jujutsu Kaisen, and this would easily be one of my favorite openings of all time, the first bit of foreshadowing that we notice of Gojo's eye would be when he picks up his blindfold, only revealing his left eye. Throughout these hints, you'll notice he only reveals his left eye. Then moving on to the second opening of Jujutsu Kaisen, it begins with us seeing a noticeable black cat at the beginning. Some say this black cat is Akutami's avatar having a little cameo, but there's more to it. When the black cat looks back, it also reveals just a single eye staring down at us, and surprise surprise, it would be looking back at us with only its left eye. Throughout Jujutsu Kaisen's second opening, we finally get to the famous part with Gojo. As he looks on, the light is only ever seen on his left eye, with his right eye covered by the shade. So that's the third point of Gojo's left eye being foreshadowed. The next one would come in Jujutsu Kaisen's mobile game opening known as Phantom Parade. This specific opening was the one to have made me realize that there's got to be something that Akutami is hiding from us concerning Gojo's left eye. Although it's just an opening to a game, it seems as though the animators still went along with the gist of Gojo's left eye. During the opening, we notice Gojo slowly looking up, and when he stares directly at us, the glass shatters, specifically on his left eye. Call me crazy, but 3 strikes and you're out. In 3 openings in a row, Gojo's left eye was seen to be outlined rather than both of his eyes. Now if we take a step back to the second opening, or more specifically the black cat, what black cats are usually associated with is bad luck. And this is common knowledge for most people, and the fact that it also only revealed its left eye, just like the many Gojos we've seen in the openings, could mean that something will happen to Gojo's left eye. I know it's a little far-fetched, but these examples from the actual manga and anime should help us out a lot more. One of the first times we noticed Gojo just simply showing his left eye is during the Kyoto Goodwill event arc, floating up higher in the sky and understanding he must head towards Juzo first. When Juzo comes running towards him, Gojo gives off a sadistic expression, but we notice how he only shows his left eye yet again in a menacing manner. Then right after this, when Gojo was performing his purple technique, we notice in the manga that it again centers the attention to only his left eye. I know you guys must be thinking I'm looking too deep into it, but Akutami is so much more tricky than we thought. Another noticeable time was when Megami had his flashback of Gojo during the death painting arc, when Gojo approached Megami whilst training and mentioned, "You'll always die alone," while staring down at him with just his left eye. I mean, some can say that Gojo just revealing his left eye is an emphasis of his more serious side, which is also a route that we can go down, but I'd rather stay on the side of the crazy theorists. But anyways, this next one we'll need to roll the time back to just over 10 years ago, when Gojo had faced off against Toji after resurrecting himself with reverse curse technique. He looked at Toji while smiling, and again with just his left eye being revealed. Now if you take it back to the main timeline, the cover of Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 51 showed us only a single eye of Gojo's, and then Gojo would receive the limelight yet again on the cover in chapter 89, again emphasizing his left eye. Even in Jujutsu Kaisen 0, Gojo's left eye is emphasized a lot. Now I'm sure there are a lot of you guys who aren't convinced that he will lose an eye, but this theory I came up with could probably make you shake your heads a bit on this matter. So the first main part to this theory of Gojo losing his eye, we'll need to assess the events which took place right before Gojo had gotten sealed, as well as the conditions of the prison realm. I believe by breaking down the prison realm bit by bit, it'll open up some loopholes based on Gojo's left eye and his inevitable escape. Chapter 89 would be when Kenjaku would place the prison realm right before the feet of the strongest sorcerer of this current generation. Gojo would be paralyzed just by staring at this mysterious object. It is then explained in chapter 90 by Kenjaku that the prison realm is a living barrier created from the final remains of the Buddhist monk Genshin, and as stated by Kenjaku, there is nothing the prison realm can't seal. The conditions for Gojo to get sealed would mean he'd need to be within a 4-meter radius of the prison realm for only a minute, but this single minute would be the minute within Gojo's brain and not in the real world. With the prison realm laying before Gojo, it expands and what we see staring down at him is a single eye. But this is where things get a little more interesting. I remember mentioning how Akutami is an incredibly tricky mangaka. Now even though it's minuscule, it's something that we can note down as a possibility. With Satoru Gojo staring down the massive eye appearing from the prison realm, we notice how there is a little blood stain underneath his left eye. You could say I'm making something out of nothing, but with all the foreshadowing concerning Gojo's left eye, it's completely plausible to think this. Anyways, with that said, Gojo is then captured by the prison realm after his confrontation with Kenjaku. Kenjaku states that the prison realm cannot be used again unless the person inside takes their own life, since it can only store one person at a time. Within this pocket dimension, which is the prison realm, time does not pass, meaning you could be 100 years into the future, and if the prison realm is still sealed with the occupant, then they will come out exactly the same way as how they entered. It seems that the only way of freeing yourself is to kill yourself. The previous occupants were probably driven to madness due to there being no concept of time inside this dimension, causing them to kill themselves. But that brings us back to the prison realm. Since Kenjaku acquired the front gate, there also existed a back gate which Master Tengen managed to get his hands on. However, once the prison realm has someone inside of it sealed, then only the person with the front gate, which is Kenjaku, can unseal it. The only way to have freed Gojo through the back of the prison realm would have been with Choji's inverted spear of heaven and Miguel's black rope, which both were destroyed by Gojo. But if you take a closer look at the back of the prison realm, it's stated that Master Tengen had sealed the back of the prison realm, but if that's the case, then the back of the prison realm wasn't sealed at one point in history, as we noticed the little slash at the back. This is where we'll need to head to chapter 145 of the manga, when Master Tengen mentioned the past sins of Kenjaku. This involves the mystery behind Kenjaku and the previous 6 Eyes users. Master Tengen states, in the past Kenjaku has lost twice to sorcerers of the 6 Eyes. The second time he took no chances and killed a star plasma vessel and 6 Eyes less than 1 month after they were born. Nonetheless, on the day of the merging, the 6 Eyes and star plasma vessel appeared. After that, Kenjaku switched to sealing instead of eradicating the 6 Eyes and began searching for the prison realm, because 2 bearers of the 6 Eyes cannot appear at the same time. I think you guys noticed the most suspicious part about what Master Tengen mentioned. Kenjaku killed the star plasma vessel and 6 Eyes user less than 1 month after they were born. However, they still appeared on the day of the merging in their new bodies. Master Tengen prior to this even said, I, the star plasma vessel, and the 6 Eyes are connected by fate. Master Tengen also mentioned how Toji was the one to have destroyed their destinies due to him breaking free of the shackles from the Jujutsu world, so it makes sense how he was capable of killing Riko Amanai. But in Kenjaku's case, when he supposedly killed the star plasma vessel and 6 Eyes user all those years ago, they still appeared on the same day of the merging, as they would be seen in new bodies, I believe. With all of those events and foreshadowing lined up, how will Satoru Gojo escape the prison realm with his left eye? If you're simply going on the basis that this alone is a theory, in the recent chapters Hanakurusu stated that she would only free Gojo if Sukuna is ultimately killed, which to me is impossible. If that were to happen, the only person who would be capable of the job would technically be Megumi. This is something I discussed in a different video about Megumi being Sukuna's greatest weakness, and is a theory I reckon you guys should watch if you haven't already. Anyways, in my opinion, it'd be impossible for Megumi to kill Yuji. He had the chance to do it the first time, but saw something in Yuji which prevented him from wanting to kill him. I don't believe that Hanakurusu will ultimately get Gojo out of the prison realm. She will play a role towards it, but only to a certain extent. Now this falls back onto the concept of the 6 Eyes. We know absolutely nothing about it other than the fact that it can physically see cursed energy. But there are two things which we can take out of all the hints that we've come across. The first one being the weird fact that Kenjaku was certain he had killed the Six Eyes user in Star Plasma Vessel a month after they were born, but yet they reappeared in new bodies on the day of the merging. The second one would have to be the fact that the prison realm becomes unsealed when one kills himself inside of it. Now I'm certain that Gojo himself doesn't know the true extent of his Six Eyes and what other abilities it may possess. I believe that there is some sort of trigger between the Six Eyes when it comes face to face with death. But if that was the case, why didn't anything happen when Gojo basically died to Toji? Well, that's where Master Tengen's words come back to solidify this idea. Toji was the one who destroyed their destinies. He was the exception in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, getting away with killing Riko Amanai, the Star Plasma Vessel, and not facing the repercussions. Gojo had to rely on himself and his usage of reverse curse technique to ultimately come back to life and cheat death. So those like Maki and Toji who defy the world of curse energy would be the Star Plasma Vessel and Six Eyes user's worst nightmare. Now with that said, Gojo would also be the first Six Eyes user to have been sealed and not killed, which is pretty interesting. Now if the Six Eyes does have a said hidden technique which defies death and continues its cycle into a new body, since two Six Eyes users cannot exist at the same time, that would mean Gojo would need to be supposedly killed by a cursed technique, just as Kenjaku attempted to kill the previous Six Eyes user all those years ago. My money is on Satoru Gojo using his left eye to kill himself and then also causing the left eye to then self-destruct. And if what I mentioned is true, then this idea that the Six Eyes have some sort of trigger to defy death, Gojo would be unsealed from the prison realm, and in order to prevent the Six Eyes from being reborn into a new body, his right eye would need to be preserved to stop the cycle of his Six Eyes being reborn into another body, and he'd need to enter a state of suspended death, just how Yuta forced Yuji into a state of death too. If there is more to the Six Eyes than what we've seen so far, then he'll end up with Gojo's supposedly dead body put in a suspended state of death inside of the prison realm, with his left eye having been destroyed. This would result in the prison realm finally being unsealed, and the rescue mission would fall on the likes of Yuji and Megumi. Huh? It does sound super crazy, and I know I'm using crumbs to support this theory, but it's Jujutsu Kaisen at the end of the day. Akutami wants us to be crazy theorists due to the way in which he's created this masterpiece. This is also a theory I really wanted to get out before the series progresses even further, because the most obvious outline would be Hanakurusu freeing Gojo, but if through some miracle this theory does indeed come to fruition, then you guys know where you saw it first. But it'll most likely age like milk, but who knows, we can still dream. With all of that mentioned, using evidence of Gojo's left eye and the conditions of the prison realm, what did you guys think of Gojo sacrificing his left eye in order to escape the prison realm all by himself? It's a bit mad, but who knows what could happen in a series like JJK. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one.